Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo Story. Manipur is back on edge, the state that has remained on the boil for more than a year now. At least 10 militants, armed militants, were killed in an encounter in Jiribam district of Manipur. But there are conflicting voices about their identity. Some say that they were not militants, but they were volunteers. But nevertheless, there is fresh spate of violence in Manipur, which is why 20 additional companies have been rushed by the center to Manipur. There are sporadic incidents of violence also taking place. What is the situation in Manipur, and how is the center and the government dealing with the situation? To discuss this, we're joined by Dr. Nemthiangai Gute. She joins us. Welcome to show, ma'am. We're also joined by Tirankar Kshetrimian. Welcome to the Mojo Story, sir. He's a Meitei voice, and I'm also joined by Harshit Sharma, my colleague. If I may start with you, Dr. Nimantkiai, what is the situation there? Seems that situation has again escalated. There is fresh violence, and it's not just limited to this particular district, but there are reports of violence in other places as well. We know that there was a lull for some time, but why a sudden eruption of violence in that state?
Thank you, Zafar, for having me on your show. You have rightly pointed out at the outset itself that the violence is not erupting, and it's been continuing since May 2023, since last year, and now we are almost 1.5 years into this violence. And like as you introduced me, even I am here in joining you from New Delhi, and since the violence has erupted, I could not visit even my hometown. So it's a uphill task for us. It's a very difficult situation for us even to go and meet our relatives. But coming to the point where you are saying that why is this keep happening, it keeps erupting, I believe that enough media sources and in the social media there has been ample evidence in terms of what is happening to whom, the blame game, the buck never stops. So here, to me, being a person who has been keen on looking into why is still being prolonged, is it the question in terms of, is it a deliberate attempt on the part of the government that you wanted to prolong the situation? What is the hidden agenda, the propaganda behind that, that in the largest democracy in this world could not handle the issue of identitarian politics? So these are some of the big question when it comes to questioning it. Is it a deliberate attempt, or is it some incompetency on the part of the present ruling government at the state and also at the center? This has been always debated in many forums, in many platforms, whether it be media, whether it be webinar, seminar. Many things has happened, but till date we didn't see any conclusive solution coming up, and we see that fresh violence are escalating. So as I say, and then there have been changes of narratives in terms of like who is at fault, who is to be blamed, and what has happened, that labeling of each other community, but it is not bringing in any kind of peaceful solution. So in such a juncture, I would, let's say, we can see that the diagnosis and the post-mortem of the problem in Manipur is happening, but the real competent authority is not coming in to address the issue. So here maybe I what I feel is that the healing touch of constitutional accommodation is the only way out. Manipur needs to ponder. So here, as we see that the concerns over the problem, how it escalated, was the concerns of a representation, allocation of resources, and then perceived domination of any community, which have, heightened the anxieties, and it just exacerbated the social division. So
You know,
I feel that
the
the
division is very clear now. The division is at all levels. We know that there are buffer zones that are created just because there is so much polarization in all sections of the society. Mr. Tirankar, the situation doesn't seem to be improving at all. There we the focus is back on the state. Every time there is violence, there is focus on the state. And in those intermittent times when there's no violence, nothing is being done to address the root cause of the problem, to bring some solution to this long pending conflict that has consumed so many lives, and thousands have been displaced so far, and now we're seeing another round of violence taking place.
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Davo, thank you for inviting me. There may be some noise in the background because I'm at the airport. But just to stress on the point, I think if there was a conflict or misunderstanding between two communities, I'm sure it would have been sorted out. It has happened before because there are several communities that live in Manipur, and it has been sorted out in almost all the conflict resolution areas that's possible, right? I think here the problem is more political in nature because I think this entire problem was created politically and it can be solved only politically. If that was not the case, this would have been solved long back. The fact that it's been going on for a year and a half and almost 1 year, 8 months is because there are ulterior forces which are, behind the game here to make sure that whatever understanding between the two communities are needed to bring peace is not happening. And there are a lot of factors at fault here. It can be miscommunication through social media, spreading of rumors, through their propaganda. So I would say the general public from both the communities are the ones who are suffering in general, and the real masters are, enjoying the show, right? Because I have a lot of very good Kuki friends as well, and we actually tried to discuss where this problem came up from. How did this even happen? What was the core and what was the core issue? Generally, there are not too many issues within our communities. So the fact that something was, created and it's taken so long is quite obvious that there's a political motivation behind it. If it was a general misunderstanding between two communities, it could have and would have been sorted out long back. That is my take on this. So I think here the state government and the central government have to take a proactive action and discuss what is the core, right? Or at least tell us what they're looking for. Otherwise, I don't see anything happening in the near future, Mr. Zafar.
Right, right. Harshit, you have been covering Manipur, you have been following this story. Both our guests be seem to have the same opinion that things can be resolved if there is a will to resolve it. But what we are seeing that forces are sent to Manipur whenever there is violence to quell the violence, but nothing is done politically to resolve this issue. We know last year we were discussing Manipur, and it was said that maybe people, respectable members from both the communities, can come together, sit on across the table, and try and find a solution to this issue. But that has not happened. In fact, the polarization seems to be only increasing by the day.
Yeah, Zafar. So the problem here has been that there have been multiple suggestions for solutions. As far as solutions are concerned, there are multiple suggestions coming in every day. I'm sure both of our guests are aware as well. People come in with multiple suggestions. Some people suggest that there should be a committee which consists of people where nobody is actually from either of the communities, neither from the Cookies or from the Meitei. So there can be a neutral solution to it. Some people also suggest that it actually needs a political solution. Neither the state government nor the central government have dealt with the issue in a competent manner. But what I'm more concerned about is, which brings me back to Professor Saab here, Professor Nemthi Angai. What I am more concerned is, we have been hearing of violence in Manipur for at least last 18 months. Every day or the other day, there's a particular incident of violence. There was a woman killed a few days back in Jiribam district only. Now we see this attack at the CRPF post. Now there's a debate going on that not everybody in Manipur with weapons in their hand is actually a militant. There are village security guards as well. There are people who have, who have weapons in their hand just with an intention to protect their family or to protect their loved ones. But why? What I want to understand here is, what is the sentiment among the people? Have they decided that none of the authorities are actually going to help them, and they themselves are the only person who are going to help them, and so they have decided that that's okay, it's fine, we are going to take weapons in our hand, we are going to take care of ourselves only, no matter what the security forces think of ourselves, no matter if they call us the militants, no matter if they try to neutralize us just to make sure that the things remain peaceful. What actually is the sentiment among the people from both the communities in Manipur? Because this is something which is more concerning for me, Professor.
Uh, it's a difficult question to speak on behalf of the sentiments of the people where I have not been in the state since the violence has broke out, but definitely through communication, through social media and other group meetings and all. uh, I mean, the sentiments in terms of what towards the uh, towards the authority or towards the state role in dealing with the situation, as my co-panelist Tirthankar has put in, that this issue is more of a politics. Now let's say if we here, even in Delhi, where we sit down, we have colleagues from Meitei also, Naga also, Kuki also, we live here like brothers and sisters from the same region. So these are something where we see radical elements, trying to work on the sentiments of the people. Yeah, definitely, as I have already said, that the discontentment has been in terms of resource distribution, unequal political representation, and a lopsided development which is happening. But we have political leaders who are encashing on this kind of differences, and they are working on gaslighting, I would say, the identity angle of the people. So uh, obviously the sentiments is that of disappointment. I mean, disappointment may be a very underrated statement, I would put it. A total disappointment towards the state and the central government. So that is why the angle of looking into a separate administration comes into it, right? So recently there
Yeah,
has been a discussion in terms of putting in Article 371F. Is it some that's where the constitutional healing touch comes in, I would say. Like, you have the parliament has the power to decide, like the exactly the way they have done with the state of Sikkim, right? So
yes,
this kind of possibilities can be explored if there is no consensus coming in between the political representatives of the Meitei communities and of the
right,
Izomi Mar community. So this is
right.
something where, now Manipur has to be kept in ICU, intensive care unit of the central government, of the parliament. It needs care. It has to recover.
No,
Otherwise,
obviously it needs care, ma'am.
it will bleed to death. It's already even dead, I would say. You need to revive. You need to revive. You have to give time to recover, rehabilitate them. You need to put in a lot of resources, investment, contextualize the issue. The issue is entirely different from the issue of other states in our country, and being in
Yes,
a very strategic geographical location, it is the more important that high time that the New Delhi, the central government, should start treating it and put it in the intensive care of the parliament. This is what I can
yes,
say.
yes, Professor. I mean, I can see the emotion when you talk about it, and all of us share the same emotion. But yes, we do know that the solution is ultimately going to come from the government. It is going to be the government who are going to solve this issue, either through constitutional ways, or through some other ways, or through administrative ways. But what I'm concerned about is कि if there is a solution which has to come from the government, then why is it taking so long? Thankar, I'll come to you. What I want to understand is, have the people of the state Manipur from both the communities, from the Meiteis and the Kukis, Have they become pessimistic about the government, both from the state and from the central? Have the people now made up their mind that none of the governments are actually going to help them in the near future at least? And they have decided that, okay, now let's, if the government is not helping us out, now let us be the safeguard for ourselves. Let us take the weapons in our hand. Let us not rely on the security forces, and we'll do every possible thing to protect ourselves. Is it what the people of Manipur have decided now?
Oh, no, I think that would be a wrong, first of all, idea to put it in the general public. What I would say that is we expected more from the central government. I would say the state anyway does not have too much power. We are dependent heavily on the central government for grants and finances and things like that. But what I would say is, in fact, I'm actually at Impal Airport currently, and I'm flying out. Today is a bun, in the entire valley of Imphal, called by the civil societies, because of the inaction being taken by the government. Now, me in person, I don't generally see what the state government can do because their powers are very limited. I expected more from the central government because they are the ones who can actually come to a understanding with the two communities and help enable the path to success. And I would also like to point out one thing is that for peace to happen and talks to happen, weapons cannot be there on the ground. Irrespective of which community it is advisable that before any peace talks happen, the weapons are surrendered, irrespective of whether it's that community or this community, right? The ground level or the groundwork for a meaningful, I would say, uh, conversation to happen to resolve this needs to be done. And in that aspect, I think the government is lacking its will there because there are weapons in the hands of both the communities. Also, what you have to look at it is from a larger geopolitical point of view. This is a very sensitive region, and there are influences of, I would say, certain superpowers which are trying to take undue advantage of the situation here because with India growing up in the global scheme of things, any instability within any border is good because it keeps the government busy with things which are not enabling a economic success sort of a story which
Yeah. So
the
would
government
you
wants
like
to
to
guide, right?
elaborate a bit more on this, sir? Which superpower you're particularly talking about? Are you trying to mention about China here?
No, I would say that most of the defense analysts always mention China or the US. You can never rule out the US as well. You have to look at what happened in Bangladesh. Anybody who's following world geopolitics would understand that that government in Bangladesh was removed with the help of external agencies. And exactly that is what can happen in this part of the world because all the border areas are not fenced properly. There's drug smuggling happening freely. So we need to be very uh, make sure that the situation is brought under control as quickly as possible so that undue advantage cannot be taken.
Right.
Right.
That is it. I think, yeah.
Right. Zafar, you wanted to come in, I guess.
Yes, I my sense is that there are two things that are plaguing the state. One is a sense of deep mistrust that is across the board between communities, between people and the government, between the expectations of the people and the s- the government's understanding of the situation on the ground. And two, there's no doubt about it that the state needs a healing touch. Now, where is that healing touch going to come from? Obviously, the response of the government, the center, is to send more forces to quell the violence. But at the same time, there needs to be an approach to win the hearts and minds of the people, to put across a healing touch. And that healing touch seems to be missing. That's the sense that we get from representatives of both the communities. But if I may start with you, Professor, what can be that healing touch? What can be that tangible, concrete measure that the governments can take to bring a solution to this long pending problem?
Uh, Jafar, first of all, see, we see that the head of the state since day one has been biased, towards being the leader of the state and being representative of all the communities, of all the ethnic groups who are there. So has been biased. That's the reason why the violence, and the problem is still escalating. And there are demands, and there have been incidents of attempt to resign, and many drama was happening. But till date, at this time also, we see that the head of the state, the chief minister, is the same person who has been biased, who has a lot of allegations and evidence against him in instigating the violence. Let's say, for example, the leak audio tape, where now the hearing is going on in Supreme Court. And there are also speculation that, in order to divert the attention towards that, there has been this kind of violence being erupting, to divert the issue and to divert the attention. So the first thing, as you have asked me, is that to uh, to bring a leader who is competent to handle all the ethnic communities in Manipur. Otherwise, if you cannot bring, then it's the role of the central to see an alternative. Because at present, we are a pluralist societies. And pluralist societies are the result of our irreversible, movements of history. Going back to history, who is what, is not going to fetch us any kind of practical solution at this point in time. They cannot be washed away. The political genius of people should be able to evolve within the democratic system, adjustment and solution. So this is, it is only a reminder that ultimately people will have to be evolved through the constitution, without which any attempt to solve issues of diversity or identity, this will remain illusory. So here, if the state government is right now very incompetent to handle the whole situation, and because of which the problem is prolonging, the violence is prolonging, enough of displacement, enough of killings, enough of, you have produced enough of orphan children, you have produced enough of widows, women are raped and assaulted. So this kind of thing, if one has to look into the solution, then one has to see what the state leadership, what is the law and order situation in the state. So if that is incompetent, then, as I say, the constitution has to come in, the central has to come
Yeah.
in, has to take them in the intensive care of the constitution. Then only there will be solution to the violence.
Titangata, you said about the intervention of the center. The center needs to be more involved in solving the problem in Manipur. But it is also a fact that Manipur is a small state, does not send many representatives to the parliament, so it just misses the focus. What can be done from the people to bring back the focus on Manipur from the policymakers to try and find a solution to this problem, and not just go about dealing it in a law and order fashion, that there is a eruption of violence and they send in more soldiers and more forces, the violence comes down, then after a while violence again breaks out, it's dealt with the same manner. Do you think that more needs to be done a step ahead than that to find a final settlement and solution to this problem of mistrust that is just destroying the state?
No, Mr. Jaffer, I think first we need to understand that even though we are a small state, we have produced a lot of stars from our state. And that is the maximum that a state can do, be it in the field of athletics, boxing, hockey, football. So Manipur is known as a sporting hub, right? So we have the necessary, I would say, coverage at the center. But the problem is, if you look at it from a political standpoint of view, the only way we can be taken seriously
Okay, we seem to have some
Yeah.
problem uh, with
right?
with line there.
But that's not in our
Yes,
hand.
right. Can you
Yeah.
repeat what you said because we lost you briefly?
Yeah, so what I was saying was the only reason why they are not taking it, or it's not, it's way below in the radar of the central government, is number one, there are a lot of big geopolitical issues going on in the world currently, which India is trying to play an active part with its growing power status in the world, right? Number two is for the center to take Manipur seriously. The only way from a political standpoint is to increase the number of MPs. So the moment if you have 20 or 25 MPs coming in from Manipur, you will see a lot more interest from the state. But that is not possible because the current constitution and the current way the election is decided in India is based on the population and the geographic area and things like that. So we will never be in a position where we are able to represent 20, 25 MPs, right? So the only way we can get the attention is by having them take us seriously, because see, it is such a sensitive place. If not now, some other time, I'm telling you, if things don't go, especially with the look east policy that the government has decided, this is going to escalate into a much bigger geopolitical problem for India. If you see the thought process of certain foreign policy think tanks, for example, if you look China into account, they have a foreign policy which looks into 25, 30 years beyond what it is currently. And if you read some of those documents, this region has a high importance. Okay, so we need to take things very seriously with the things, the way the progress has come to this region in the past 5 to 8 years, when the center put in a lot of money, right? It was moving in the right direction, but again it has gone back to, I would say, 5, 6 years with respect to business and things like that, because of the current situation here. And I'm telling you, there are so many communities living here, and this kind of a situation, even if it has happened, we have been able to solve it within 3 to 4 months, max 8 months. Nothing has lasted so long. So there's a bigger force playing at this level, which normal public like me and you who are here may not be in a frame of mind to understand the bigger game, right? So there is something, because this is very abnormal, this is very unnatural. Any conflict which keeps popping up and adding fuel to the fire, if, when it goes silent for some months, there'll be something drastic which happens, we'll get it back on top, right? So there is a game being played, and we need to look into it. And people need to understand from both the communities that ultimately it's us we are suffering, right? And we have to handle it the way we have to handle it. And that is one of the reasons why you see from both the communities taking up arms to protect themselves, because the situation is such that anything can happen anytime. But as I said, I think the first confidence building measure would be to make sure that the weapons are surrendered, and the center gives the assurance that no cross firing will happen or no attacks will happen on each other. And for that, the weapons have to be surrendered, because as long as the weapons are on the ground with the general public, there is going to be incidents. There are going to be some, I would say, criminal elements or elements which do not want this, peace. They will take action, obviously.
No, Titankar, I do agree with most of the things with what you have said, but I differ at 2 points, and which brings me to a very important question. Yes, I do agree that Manipur is a state which has managed to produce a lot of stars, but in a place where we are living in a democratic setup. So, for any government, for the central government to take care of the citizen of the state, of the people in Manipur, it is not necessary for the state to produce stars. I mean, even if Manipur has not managed to produce a single player at the international level, does that mean that the central government is not to be held accountable for the things in Manipur? If a state is not producing people who are adding something to the society, if a state is not producing people who are, winning the medals for the country at the international platform, does that mean that the people in the state are not to be ensured of a peaceful life by the central government? I mean, I don't think a democratic setup is designed this way. This is where I differ from you.
No,
No,
of the
hold on, hold
state.
on, hold on, sir, hold on, sir. You were on mute. Yeah, come again.
Yeah, it was an analogy for me to say, depending on the visibility at the center, right? Out of the 7 states in the Northeast, the 7 sisters as we call it, We have one of the best visibilities because of so visibility. When you compare that, maybe because you're less visible, they're not paying attention. It is not that every state they have to look
Hmm.
after. I mean, also if you see what I'm saying is this is something which needs to go very deep into your someone with a very good geopolitical sense of South Asia in general would understand this. I'll just give you an example. Very
No,
recently,
I
a week
understood. Yeah.
back,
Hmm.
the chief minister of Mizoram came out with a statement that we want to become an independent Christian nation. Okay, somebody, how is he thinking at that level? Obviously he thinks that somebody's going to back him up, somebody's going to provide the funds to do that. So I mean, these two communities fighting is a very small thing, when you compare the larger geopolitical picture. But obviously this has to be sorted out for things to be stable. But there's a much larger game which is being played, and maybe we are the casualties of that game, right?
Yes.
So you
All
you
right.
need to look at the region. Okay.
No, no, I've understood what you're trying to say, sir. Professor,
Yeah.
I'll come to you on this. I have one more question, which will bring me back to Tirthankar. But yes, I do agree with Tirthankar is trying to say that Manipur holds a very critical importance considering the geopolitical situations. But do you also believe that the state needs to do more so that it can bring the center's attention towards itself? Or do you believe that when the center tries to portray a situation where the center is not focusing enough on the state just because the number of MPs from Manipur in the assembly are not quite enough, which are going to impact the political situation of the parties, do you believe that it is going to be a right statement from any government or for the people of Manipur to understand that okay, we don't have multiple MPs from our state who are going to represent us in the parliament, so the central government has valid reasons to not to pay full attention to us? Dr. Nemityang.
Yes, what you have taken from Tirthankar and what you are saying, it's a very debatable issue. And when it comes to representation, definitely, let's say I agree to the number game. Okay, let's say this situation is happening in UP or Bihar. It will be done
Hmm.
within 2 3 days. The violence will be under control. Definitely, there is that angle of representation. There is that angle of
Yes,
numbering,
I do
right?
agree. The angle is there, ma'am. But what I'm trying to understand, do you believe should it be there? Is it right for the government to take it in a manner it is being taken right now?
Should not be there because let's say we all are children of Mother India. Okay, different state. Let's take a different siblings. Now, Manipur being more the younger siblings or the smaller child is suffering. So, as a mother, how will I will not discriminate my children if the weaker one is struggling to handle his or her internal affairs. I would definitely, as a mother, interfere and get into it and see that my children are not suffering. My children are not discriminated as compared to other of my children who are more stronger, who are more potential, who are more capable. I would definitely try to lift them up so that they also become equally capable and potential like my other children, right?
Right.
So the logic of number game when it comes to in terms of politics, if you want to play politics, that will come. So
Hmm.
ultimately the larger question is what is your politics? Okay, if your politics is about identity, if your politics is about othering others, then this is what is going to happen. So we
Right.
need to have a healthy politics, and we need to treat all the children of Mother India equally. That's
See,
why always everyone who are coming from the northeastern region, we always have that sentiments of that stepmotherly treatment when we come to the
hmm.
uh, mainstream region or mainstream population. So that has to be, the
Yes.
gap, that
Which
feeling.
is so unfortunate. Yes.
That's so unfortunate. And I agree, and I believe that there are baby steps taken by the government, previous government, present government also look is policy,
Hmm.
act is policy. But the question is, it should not be only in terms of lip service. Okay, there has to be
Hmm.
an action where you actually you have that pure
Hmm.
intention to kind of bring that region in
ठीक है.
equal potential and capability with the other states.
All right, all right. Before we move to the conclusion, ma'am, I have another small question for you. Uh, you very well mentioned about the recent petition in the Supreme Court where the Kuki petitioners, Advocate Prashant Bhushan himself, advocated that there are multiple audio calls being circulated in which the sitting Chief Minister of Manipur, CM Biren Singh, was being accused by the petitioner that he is equally responsible for escalating the violence. He allowed the arms and ammunitions. He also let the people escalate the violence, which ultimately led to these situations. If it turns out to be true, although the Supreme Court has asked for the credibility and the authenticity of these audio calls, but if it turns out to be true, or if there's if even if the trial goes on, the proceeding goes on, do you think that people of Manipur should not still doubt the intentions of the government to resolve this issue? How are we going to convince the people in Manipur then if their CM is under scrutiny only, if the CM is being questioned by the Supreme Court whether he was, involved in escalating the violence or not? How are we going to satisfy, or how are we going to, make the people of the state understand that, yeah, the government actually is trying to resolve the issue, Professor?
Yes, Harshit, it is a very important question. It's all about trust building. And in the effort of that trust building, one has to put in a practical or decision that the trust building can be, yes, despite whether it's proof or not, beyond doubt there are ample evidence and without any ambiguity. I can say that in Twitter or in various things, whether there are things which are, even if you say things beyond the information technology where it can be manipulated or edited, beyond doubt there are, things, and narratives also keep changing. So
Hmm.
this role where the chief minister is playing a divisive role, and if in order to gain the trust of the people again, the central
Hmm.
has to take a very strong decision in terms of whether it gives a separate administration under the provision of the constitution, or either it removes the chief minister of the state and bring in a neutral person, or let's say an unbiased person. And the people has voted out during the Lok Sabha election. We see that the people has voted out the party, the political party. We see the
Hmm.
inner Manipur and outer Manipur representative all from the Congress party. So people have given
Right,
their mandate. People have given their mandate. So the
right,
the central government has to take a very strong and stern action if it has to gain the trust of the people again. This is
right.
my take on it. Yeah.
Right, right. Zafar, do you want to add on to it before we move to Tirthankar about the same? The accusations on the sitting Chief Minister, CM Biren Singh, Kuki petitioners have gone to the Supreme Court mentioning that there are certain audio calls which are being circulated, and the audio calls do mention that the CM was equally involved in escalating the violence in the state, although nothing has come up, and they are all being, being heard by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has asked for the credibility. But what do you think, how is it going to impact the situation in Manipur, Zafar? How do you
See,
want to add on? Yeah.
see, this audio calls came up a few months ago, although the situation had turned back almost a year back, more than a year back. Now, Manipur presents a situation of classic case of a failure at multiple levels. There cannot be a better example of failure at different levels. At the level of the people who don't seem to reconcile and to adjust with each other, who are living in different zones, and the government, which seem to have failed at all levels to bring about a resolution to reach out to the two communities, the center and the state government. And all this has added in mistrust. And one of the examples of this mistrust is when people say that the chief minister representing them, their state, the leader of that state, is biased. Now, there can be no better example of mistrust than this. But as I was saying, the only approach towards this problem has so far been to treat it as a law and order problem. It is not a law and order problem. It is very clear. Had this been a law and order problem, then situation would have resolved in the last 1 year. There are multiple security agencies on the ground working, but that has not happened. So clearly, this is not a law and order problem. But what is being done? What at all is being done on other levels to resolve this problem? Unfortunately, we don't see any
Right.
movement forward, either from the civil society or from the government, the state government or the central government. And as things seem to develop on the ground, this is not going to end. After every few days, after every few months, we'll see eruption of violence and the same response. If you approach a problem with the same response, if you approach a disease with the same sort of a solution, it's not going to help. It's not going to
Yes.
solve that problem. You have to have a different approach, and that different approach has to come from the people and from the state government and the central government. Then only there can be some light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, it's pitch
Right.
dark out here, and there seems to be no solution on the ground.
Tirthankar, would you like to add on to it? Your concluding statement, sir?
Now, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I won't look at it from a short-term perspective. My solution would be more long-term in general in nature. For example, first thing is border fencing has to be done properly. The border has to be guarded by a professional border security force like BSF. For example, how it's being done in Punjab and parts of J&K. And number three is that arms and ammunition, which is there with the general public, has to be taken away from them. Either they have to surrender it, or the government has to take active action and make sure that it is taken away from them. When these three things are done, what we can assume is that the external influence or external factors are sort of controlled to an extent, and then we can look inwards to solve the problem within our community, right? Because even though it's an internal conflict between two communities, you cannot rule out the fact that there's a big external factor playing here, and we need to make sure that that big external factor has as much less importance as possible in the current scenario. And for that we need to make sure that uh, all the illegal activities with respect to drug smuggling and other things are taken into control, and to make sure that in the long term this never happens again, right? When it comes to the questioning of separate administration and things like that, I have a slightly different view. If we go by what the other community is saying, then India would be broken up into 10,000 different parts. We need to come to a political situation under the Constitution of India, a viable political situation, and that should be discussed at the political level. Because this would set a bad example for other states and other regions where there is
Hmm.
currently, different aspects of negotiation happening, right?
All right. All right. Professor Nem, last comments?
Yeah, I would like to say, like what Tirthankar has said, within the constitution of the country, we have examples like as I was pointing out, Sikkim, and we have examples like Pondicherry, Goa. All these are a very small state, which there was no such kind of a violence which was happening to bring in a different, administration. The point was to protect the interests of the people, where you see that here there are evidence of violations of human rights, basic human rights, and you see that there are conflict of interest, and you see that
Hmm.
communities where, in this state has been the state has been very endemic to
Hmm.
this kind of ethnic conflicts we see in the past also. It keeps repeating. So how many lives will we need to lose in order to understand this kind of complex situation? Why don't, like, as he rightly said, we need to
Hmm.
see a longer the future, where these
Hmm.
kind of things are not repeated again, ever again till the existence in
Right.
this world. So there you need to have a solution where you see that even at this stage two communities cannot coexist. We cannot even access the airport to reach our hometown. We have to go through Aizawl, and then we have to take another 15 long hours of journey, and that to a very muddy road, and that kind of circumstances we are going through in that situation. So there has to be some political talks has to be there, but there has to be some interim arrangement that has to be done immediately.
All right.
People are losing their life because there is no basic healthcare, for chronic diseases, people living over there. So the poor who cannot come to Delhi or who cannot even access till Guwahati for a better health treatment, they succumb to their disease. So this, I'm just giving you a very micro example of when we talk about solution, we should ensure that avoidable situation should not occur again. There are something what we call in our public health terminology, modifying factors and unmodifying factors. So these are something which can be modified, which can be avoided. So let's not repeat again. That's what my request and my prayer is. Whoever has your viewer listening to your show, either it can be any kind of political representative who have a say in the decision making, let's not repeat this violence and this crisis again ever. And even if it requires taking a hard stand, we need to do that.
Yes, obviously. I mean, as far as the repetition is concerned, we all are on the same page. We all agree with what you have said, ma'am. All right. Yes. Yeah. So we all agree with what you have said, ma'am. All of us wish that things get better in the state as soon as possible. But till then, we can only expect the state government and the central government to take the necessary actions and make the things in Manipur better and peaceful again as soon as possible. Till then, thank you so much for joining all of us, and do take care of yourselves. Audiences, please stay tuned with Mojo Story for all other rapes. Thank you so much for watching.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.